Alright, so I'm back here on day 2. My pre-fill has all dried overnight. First thing I'm going to do is take my 4-inch knife and I'm knocking down any ridges or high spots. This is going to make it easier to set my mud and bed my tape without running into any problems. This is the mud I'm using, this is the tape I'm using, and this is about what it should look like once your tape is on. When you're bedding your tape, you need to start in the middle of the tape and work your way out towards the edge like I'm doing here. Don't start on the edge and work your way towards the middle, otherwise your tape is going to tear right off the wall. So one side, then the other, working from the middle out. And once your tape is set, you're going to go over and try and work that mud into the tape so it's more or less saturated. This is going to give you a strong bond between the tape that's going to bridge the joint between both pieces of drywall and prevent cracks from telegraphing through later. I've got all my joints taped at this point. This is what you're looking for. You're looking for that tape to be more or less saturated with mud while still being able to see and make out the texture of that tape. You don't need to throw a whole lot of mud on it at this point. It doesn't need to look pretty. It doesn't need to even look flat. What you're looking for is to have that tape bonded strongly to the drywall, and that's it. That's all you're shooting for at this point. This is the mud I'm using for my first skim coat. So you can see here I've skimmed about half of my work area and the small section up at the top of the wall. And at this stage it still isn't smooth. This doesn't look like a finished wall by any means, but the idea is you're going to start applying thin layers of joint compound to slowly build all the surfaces of this repair area out. You want to build everything out to eventually you get it more or less even. Now I can see a couple places where my tape is at and it's sitting more proud than the rest of the area. That's okay at this point. This is the consistency of that 90-minute mud I'm using for my first skim coat. I'm going to try and show you how it behaves a little bit. I would say a little thicker than pancake batter, but it doesn't need to be real watered down. I find that consistency makes it really easy to work with without spilling all over the place. Here I've got the whole work area covered with my first skim coat. Alright, I've come back about 5 hours later to let that first skim coat dry, and this time I'm using right out of the bucket the green lid all-purpose joint compound. I want to point out a couple things here. The first thing you should notice is this skim coat is quite a bit smoother and flatter than the first coat. Again, we're slowly trying to achieve uniform flatness, but it's still not perfect. These two spots I'm highlighting with my finger, they dried faster than the rest of the area. That's where my tape below still sits a bit more proud than the surrounding area. I've got some air bubbles spread throughout my work area. That's not a huge deal at this point. I've got some lift-off marks and some ridges. Not worried about any of that. The entire point is we're getting closer and closer to uniform flatness. I'm going to let this dry at least overnight. It's probably going to need one more coat for this big area. Up top, this small area came out really well. It was really flat when I started, so that just needs some sanding and that'll be ready for paint right away. Alright, this is day 3. I was at this house for only about 30 minutes to get this third skim coat on, and this is a lot flatter than where it was at yesterday. I'm trying to show you some of the imperfections though. It's still not perfect. I've got some air bubbles in there. I've got lift-off points at 2 vertical lines pretty much because it was hard to drag my knife all the way left to right across this area. It was about 10 feet across. So I did it in 3 different sections, which is why I've got lift-off points broken up into about 3 sections. But this should give you an idea that we are getting a lot flatter and much closer to being ready to sand. I'm going to come back and check it tomorrow morning. It may need one more skim coat, but you can see where those tape lines are. The difference is just about disappeared.